I remember at a time when they said, okay, they have said truck drivers should continue moving. But the truck should continue, cargo should come. But the truck drivers who drive have to be COVID-free. So we said, before you set off from Mombasa and Dar es Salaam, can we do a test? So we came up with an app as a region, which is called RECDS, Regional Electronic Cargo Truck and Driver Tracking System. So we get your results before you reach the border. It helped us a lot. And then we decided also, by then, when COVID came, we had to implement what we call the Uganda Electronic Single Window. The electronic single window is where all government agencies come in and log in, those which are involved in clearance of goods. So you don't have now to run to Ministry of Agriculture to get your permit to export goods. You don't have to run to trade to get your trade permits. They are all online. So you sit in the comfort of your room, if you're a trader, you're a business person, and you log on to the electronic single window. Of course, we immediately had to sit in Arusha as East African countries and also agree if masks are needed urgently for our people, if these COVID relief items are needed urgently, oxygen, medical oxygen, cylinders and whatever, before they would be paying taxes. So we said we have to remit duty. So there was duty remission on most of these items, and they were gazetted. So that was another one of the measures we took to make sure that our traders and production continues. So even those who were producing, I think you saw a lot of sanitizers coming up. They used to pay taxes, so there was remission. So manufacturers of alcohol turned into now sanitizers. And I think we've not imported any sanitizer. Instead, we are exporting sanitizer. But when you look at the domestic taxes side, because that is customs, and the domestic taxes, we've tried to do simplification of registration. We want to simplify registration. We at URA, we think every Ugandan has an obligation to pay tax. So we are trying to simplify the registration process so that we allow everyone to get a TIN. That's the first stage. Yes, Mildred, you should have a TIN. Whether you have imported, whether you're in business or not, have a TIN as a basic. Have a tax identification number. And one is that. And we have been doing that by making sure we don't stay in Kampala alone. We are trying to move up country. Part of the reason why we bought the buses, if you saw the buses now, we have regional buses, is to do that. There are some hard to reach areas, and we have taxpayers who are doing business, and they are not registered. Yeah. So we want to make sure that at least we expand the register. Currently, we are around 18,000 and want to grow it to 2.5 by the end of this financial year. So if you can grow it 2.5 million taxpayers, we will be grateful. We also doing something in domestic taxes that would help us. You've heard about the IFRIS and the DTS, Electronic Fiscal Receipting and Invoicing System. So we want to say, if you're buying these things from a supermarket, please ask for a receipt. We had started a campaign called Impari City Young. If every Ugandan would buy something and ask for a receipt, not just this cash receipt, we are looking at an electronic invoiced receipt, then indirectly every Ugandan is paying a tax. And this is the campaign we are on. We've started with supermarkets because most people go to these supermarkets. We've started with manufacturers. We are moving. We want at least every Ugandan to support us in this endeavor. When you go to buy something, ask for a receipt. Ask for a receipt. Because that's when you know that actually on this receipt there was VAT. There was some tax which was paid. And we'll get it easy. It becomes easy for us to collect. For our manufacturers, of course, we have gone into making sure that there are some excisable goods. If it is alcohol, it is cement, it is water, we are going to keep on adding, the minister will add more items, that you should have a tax stamp. So when you have a tax stamp and you're producing whatever water you're drinking and it has a stamp, means you've paid tax. So if you're drinking this Rwenzori or Wava water and you don't see a stamp, you alert us. That person has not paid taxes. And of course, we also started a facility called installment payment. Installment payment is where we saw people stranded, goods were stuck with us, banks were refusing to give them loans. I don't know why, Fabian, you are refusing to give them loans. So we said we are stuck with people's goods. So what do? Let's do an installment payment arrangement. So if you are to pay 120 million, pay us like 50% and take your goods and sell, and then you come back and pay. We saw it work for us. It did not stop. Instead of holding revenue, we came up with that measure until the banks now came up and are picking it up, are beginning to support our taxpayers. So there are so many, Mildred, that we have done to simplify our processes, to improve and support the taxpayers to continue paying, and we'll continue to do so. We ask for your advice and support, and we hope we'll get there and collect this 24.6 trillion for the development of Uganda, so that we get out of this dependence syndrome. Always borrowing. We can reach that level where Uganda can collect all the taxes, like other developed countries have done. But choking on loans, it's not the way to go. And we need Ugandans to support us in this cause. Thank you so much, Mildred.
All right, thank you very much. Our Acting Commissioner General, also Mr. Ebo Kagumire, who is in charge of customs now. When Mr. Kagumire talks about 24.6 trillion target, we say tighten your seatbelt, but also just be responsible in any case and follow the procedure just to be able to thrive in business. As we continue with our discussion, we'll be focusing on some key areas, including loan management. We'll be looking at the investment climate. We'll be looking at intellectual property rights. And we'll also be looking at marketing channels, especially given the fact that during this COVID-19 era, there are many struggling businesses. Some have closed down. Some are really trying to come up again. Now that the president is talking about reopening the economy fully after 4.8 million of us are vaccinated. I will not forget to remind us to go and get vaccinated, because it's important for all of us to be protected against COVID-19. Let's also get one of our panelists, and that is Ruth B. Nzikamsoke, who is a head skills development facility at the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, on what basically are the priorities of the entrepreneurs and business managers during the pandemic. Back in the day before such a pandemic, I mean, you would do everything and anything, yes? But what are those key issues that one needs to prioritize on during such a time?
Thank you very much, Mildred, and thank you to our viewers. I want to applaud URA for organizing this event, not for only this year, last year and the other year.
Yes.
And I've been with them for all this time. So for me, I think having this discussion is quite very important, because things have completely changed. I mean, if it was the normal, we would have all this room filled. But it's not the case. And I think what businesses have learned, and they need to learn, is that things cannot be as usual.
Sure.
You know what happens is that a number of the business people we have would say, my mother, my grandfather used to do this thing like this. I have been doing it for the last 15 years and it's working. COVID has taught us the game has changed. We need to be a little bit more cautious. I can tell you, there are a number of businesses that never used to take risk as a key element in their business because they were comfortable. I have been managing my hotel for the last 20 years. It has grown and I'm making money. And I've been going to Japan every week or every 2 weeks. They never thought that a single day will come and the whole world would stop. What does this teach us? As a business, staff or allocating resources for risk and understanding risk. A number of times we say it is for Fabian in the banks. You know, for banks, Risk is key. You cannot find a small business saying, oh, I need to learn about risk. Now, this is the time to allocate resources, to allocate personnel, to plan for risk, and know a day will come and we no longer have parties. A day will come and the bars are closed. Just ask yourself, if I was running my bar for the last 20 years, during COVID, what is happening to me? Did I plan what I will do? Do you know what is happening to school owners? If for 2 years you are not earning, meaning if you don't learn how to diversify your businesses, that is also critical. Diversification of products. Last time I was telling people that, if Coca-Cola as a company would say, in this particular time, let me go on my backpack and launch a new product. You've seen their bushera, you've seen their milk. Why is it now? Why? Maybe it is now what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, the wedding numbers had gone a little bit down. We consume a lot of sodas.
Sure,
all right?
Sure.
And the hotels are closed. But with bushera, even when a child is at home and the flavored milk, I can still take it.
Yes.
You get it? And in a business, we don't think like that. We need to think a little bit more. And for businesses, more than ever, you need more skilled workers. You cannot just you need somebody that I can say, Michael is able to market. Michael is able to drive the truck and deliver the product. It is not only about saying, she's very good with customer care. It doesn't work. You should be able to have an accountant that is also able to sell, that is also able to go online. And this, for me, is very critical. The issues of digital skills. I do remember a number of times we'd use internet to chat, to just, send emails. Things have changed. Those businesses that utilize IT during COVID have made a lot of money, and it won't stop. It has taught us that actually, and I know I talked to a number of young people that had shops in town, small shops in town. Yeah. When they locked, they said, what can I do? They called me, they said, what can I do? I said, you know what? You have your internet, you know how to use WhatsApp, you know how to use Instagram, you can use your Facebook, just go home. You don't even need to pay the rent. Because one told me they are demanding 6 million. I said, you can't afford it. She went home, got online. The money she is making online is actually now 10 times what she was making in the shop. Mm-hmm. You have to pay rent, you have to pay workers, and I think that for me, the digital era has come and it will not stop. It is not going anywhere. One of the other things that is also critical for businesses is that have a good relationship with your bankers, your financial institution, and I'm glad Fabian is here because things changed. If you're this person who never cared, this was a very trying moment whereby if you know your banker, it is easier and it should not stop right now. Better businesses normally have better relationships with their bankers, better relationship with their tax institutions. I can tell you, if you had a number of people do not bother, URA, when they see URA, they run away. This was a time to test businesses that if you have a good, and they had. I actually want to applaud the CG because I can tell you when COVID came, we saw a lot of flexibility with URA. Yeah. And please keep it up. Because for me, I say we are in a marriage, it's a relationship. And a number of people that utilize URA actually benefited a lot. Yeah. Because they would understand, sit with them, talk to them, and you're able to get a solution. And this is teaching us that actually these institutions that we see, they should not be far away from us. They should be a little bit nearer. And one of the things normally what employers do is that they say, these are my most important workers, these are clerical workers. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you in COVID, he told you that, Uganda wanted the money, traders had to trade, manufacturers had to produce, but the guys were very important by the time were the truck drivers. Yes. Did we know they are important?
Yes.
Did we know they were not until COVID? The people who saved our lives, even we as people, health workers, these are clerical. Normally, it is teaching us that actually all workers are important. Very, very important. Sometimes we don't invest in them. And for businesses, I am telling you, when you're planning for investment, skilling your workers, skill all of them because you need them. The other key issue I want to emphasize is business continuity. Let me tell you something, Mildred. During COVID, everybody thought I am dying next. I don't know if you didn't think about it.
Sure.
There is a day when I almost lost about, very close people to me, about 5 in 1 week. In 1 week. And I said, God, if I can survive at least for the next 2 months, I would thank you. Because I can tell you, everybody almost got COVID. Everybody almost got COVID. And there was not a single time in the last 30 years in Uganda that we felt death was much more closer. Maybe during the HIV/AIDS period. Maybe that time. Yeah. And I think what it teaches business people is that you must be able to know that the business has to live beyond you. Because we lost so many people who were managing businesses, running businesses, but if it is only you who knew all the tactics of your business, if it is only you who was managing the business, then it wouldn't survive. And most businesses we have in Uganda are family-owned businesses. I share the experience of some of the family-owned businesses that I work with that I've been serving and supporting on the board. And there are people that we lost that I typically knew. I will not stop using these 2 examples because I am proud of them. One example is the example of Regina Muchivi of Uganda Funeral Services. I have served on her board for the last 10 years. And I am glad that during COVID, when she died, his sons are now running the business. So Joseph and Peter, I am proud of you for taking over and running your mother's business. Why? Because she left. She didn't know she would leave. She would die. Yeah. You get it? It is a very complicated business. She took time to train her sons and involve them in the business. Another example of the other business I'm very proud of is where we lost Hajat Aisha of Aloish Organic. She was another lady that was so close to me. Very young children. The last born is 5 to 6 years, about 6 years. The firstborn is about 25 years. Dawn, we are proud of you. When the mother died, even when she died, they did not close the business. They worked. Because she said, we must. The same thing with funeral services. And the same thing I remember Murana told his children, if I die, don't close the businesses. And I can tell you, these are young children, but they are able. So I'm speaking to you business owners. You have your sons, you have your wives. You don't trust your family, you trust outsiders. This is the time to have Ugandan businesses that can stand the test of time. How do we do it? Let's train our children. Let us involve them. Let us give them responsibilities. Let us open our businesses to institutions that are able to support us and advise us. Let us use opportunities like this one to learn and be able to see how we can make our business a little bit much more stronger.
Okay. Wow. Speaking about business continuity, I think you speak to the heart of many businesses in the country. Even the businesses you consider as being huge, they think they need to think twice. And yes, more than ever, we felt death very, very close. Ideally, you would interview someone, and a week after they tell you that person is dead. It was really terrible. But well, allow me now call upon, we'll be getting Ruth once again speaking to us. Crystal Kabajwara, who is also the Director Tax at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now, even in COVID-19 pandemic, government still needs the taxes. URA still needs to hit its target. I mean, everything needs to continue running because, after all, services have to be coming through, meaning that even when I am struggling in a business, I need to pay the taxes. There have been some government interventions and the expectations as well that, the businesses did have from the government and the various tax bodies and everyone now. How is business community, in your own view and the research you've done, coping up in COVID-19, including their expectations of what would be coming in from government side, including the likes of Uganda Revenue Authority?
Thank you, Mildred, and good morning, our viewers. Thank you to the Uganda Revenue Authority for this initiative. It is welcome. Taxpayer engagement is always a bonus. Getting closer to your taxpayers and as well as educating them is quite helpful. Now, Mr. Kagumire spoke to some of the measures that the government has put in place to support businesses, and I think it's always important to recognize and applaud the initiatives that government has done, both from a tax perspective as well as from a non-tax perspective. From a tax perspective, for example, the waiver of penalties and interest up to 20th of June have been very helpful for taxpayers in terms of giving them headroom and flexibility with their cash flows. In 2020, for example, there was the introduction of the withholding VAT, and thankfully, the URA was kind enough to stop the implementation of that as they saw the impact of COVID on businesses. Yeah. So all that is uploaded. And when I was preparing for this event, I took time to actually speak to some people in the business community across the spectrum, speaking to business owners, small, medium, large enterprises, just to understand from them the feel and what they expect more from the government. And I found that the answers their responses were quite consistent around areas, for example, certainty. Right now, times are so uncertain. And every bit of certainty is helpful to business owners. Let me give you an example. Every June, when the budget is read, many business owners hold their breaths. You know that there's going to be a change in the excise duty rate on sugar, on fuel, on beer, on airtime. And those annual changes really bring about uncertainty. And what business is asking of government is, can you take a long-term view of tax changes to help us plan better, to help us think long-term rather than having an annual change in the tax rate, which makes it very difficult for us to plan for our employers, to plan for our businesses, to plan for cash flow, to plan for working capital. So let us take a long-term view. If you could lock in those tax rates for at least 3 years so that businesses become more predictable, you create a predictable environment for them. Empathy is one of the things that has come up. And I think the key word here is more empathy. And I like the flexibility that has come in from the URA in terms of giving longer payment periods for taxpayers, deferring tax payments, deferring the filing of returns. That shows empathy. But what the business community is saying is that have more empathy, especially around dispute resolution. When we have a disagreement, when you come in and you audit my business and you give me an assessment of 20 billion shillings, or you give me an assessment of 10 billion shillings, that alone is the difference between life and death for my business. Before you actually make that move, engage with me, understand my business, understand my pain, what has happened to me, how has COVID impacted me. Before you issue a practice note or some directive, let us have a discussion with the sector, with the industry, so that we are working and we're in this together. What businesses don't want right now is surprises. So let us try to minimize surprise as much as possible, engage with the business, be open. We want to see a URA, a government that is open for business, that where people know that I can walk into Mr. Kagumire's office and he will listen to me. I can walk into CG's office and he will listen to me. I can walk into Kampala Central, large taxpayers, and I will be listened to. So let us have that continuous engagement. There has been this issue around landlords and tenants, and I know there's been a lot of financial relief given to some sectors, looking at the UDB COVID Relief Fund that was extended to manufacturers of essential goods and items, and also not forgetting the 100,000 shillings that came in from Office of the Prime Minister to the vulnerable in our communities. But the landlord-tenant issue is a critical one. You know, at the start of COVID, there was a directive from the government that landlords should not evict tenants for failure to pay rent or for delays in rent payments. Yeah. If you go to downtown, you find so many buildings unoccupied, shops were locked with people's goods in there. And yes, it's been helpful for the tenants, but there has not been a corresponding relief for the landlords. And yet, we are all in the same country. We are all being affected by COVID. So how then do you help the landlords in this kind of situation? Mr. Kagumire spoke to the targets that the URA has at the moment to increase. I think you said you're working towards increasing collections to about 24 billion shillings. I know your target from finance was about 22. But from our perspective, last year the economy grew by 3.3%. The previous year, it grew by 3%. It's projected this year to grow by 4.3. I don't even think we shall get 4.3 given the current economic situation.
Yeah.
URA's target is growing year on year. Can government reduce the pressure on the URA?
Oh, yeah.
Because when you put URA on pressure, they have passed on that pressure to taxpayers. And then they will go for the long-hanging fruits. They will not go for the people who are not in a tax net. They will come after the businesses that are already compliant, that are already in the system. So where is that additional, Mr. Kagumire, where is that 24 billion going to come from? If it's not going to come from me, who already owns a business, I'm already complying, I'm already struggling to pay my taxes. Yeah, so if that pressure can also be reduced at the top end so that there is more flexibility down at the bottom end.
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. I love the last one, and I think Ebo and the team should be smiling at that one. And also you talked about the aspect of, I would refer to it more as balancing the boats, the issue of the landlord-tenants issue. Well, the bill is coming through back to Parliament, and I also felt it for the likes of Fabian. The government is saying restructure loans, or you should be flexible, but the banks are also saying this is not our money, it doesn't belong to us. We also need to be facing all the expectations coming through. And this is where I would also bring in Mr. Fabian Kasi, who is the managing director of the second largest bank, and I'm talking about Centenary Bank. Business financing in this COVID-19 pandemic. Where are the opportunities, but the challenges as well? Because we need to speak about this. Many were excited about restructuring of loans, but they never went to the nitty-gritty of what it means to restructure a loan and whether there are any costs. Many people thought, I will just come to Fabian and say, please, I am not going to be paying in the next 6 months. I can start thereafter, and everything is okay, and it is all cleared, and the 6 months are just making me go scot-free.
Well, Mildred, thank you very much. And again, I too am delighted to be here, to be attending this seminar or session, and also being able to share insights as far as the banking space is concerned. Ruth mentioned that we are now in a new world order where probably things will never be the same again. And the earlier all of us, take cognizance of that, the better. Of course, we've seen the challenges that all of us, including business people, people working in banks and other enterprises, challenges that we've faced as far as restrictions in movement, no longer be able to physically connect. When we talk about us as banks, connecting with our customers has always been a norm. We would always want to be in touch with them, being able to discuss with them how best they need to do their business, discussing with them how best they need to manage their loans, and so on. Because at the end of the day, we need to be in a win-win situation. However, all that has been rendered, a little bit difficult. But that doesn't mean that we shut down businesses. That doesn't mean that shops will be shut down. Life has to go on. And what we've done is to ensure that we reconfigure our businesses, we reconfigure our systems, our methods of working with our customers to be able to make them, be in position to continue to meaningfully work with banks. And talking about loan restructuring, it was one of the things that we immediately took on, because we knew if the economy shut down, if businesses were not working, those people who had borrowed money from banks would definitely find trouble and difficulties in being able to make repayments. So we said, look, come, let's sit down, tell us what is the likely time within which you feel you'll be able to repay these loans. And we had to agree on new repayment schedules. This is what we called the loan moratoriums that were introduced at that time with the help of our regulator, the central bank, the Bank of Uganda, because there were always restrictions as to how many times we needed to reschedule loans. But this time there was that waiver, and we had to work with our customers. Of course, many of them probably, as you mentioned, didn't understand the implications. Many of them probably also didn't appreciate that they needed to do that. So we needed to educate them, to say, come, we sit down, and first of all, we take you through the implications. When we reschedule, it means you'll be paying this loan over a slightly longer period of time. And that would mean you would be paying a little more interest than before. But of course, we knew for some of them it would be a big burden. So we had to, on a case-by-case, decide whether we needed to reduce on the interest rates. And indeed we did for some customers. We also had to waive penalties, because in the past, if you were to pay late, you would be penalized. But we said, look, we are in this together, so if we can do something, we need to do it, and we did it. And we are still in discussions, again, to see how we can help, for example, the heavily hit sectors, like the education sector.
Yeah.
We have close to 700 schools that borrowed from us, and currently having a portfolio of about 140 billion that is outstanding. Now, these are institutions that haven't been earning, nothing has been happening for the last 2 years, yet they had these loans, that are outstanding. But again, we don't want them to close shop, because if they close shop, definitely it comes back to us as their bankers, who have been working with them. So we are in discussion with each one of them to see how we can either, waive interest rates, interest expenses, waive the penalties, make the loans, be paid over a longer period of time. Of course, somebody will ask, why don't you, waive the entire loan? As you rightly put it, this money is not our money. It is your money who, deposited it with us. It is their money, the other depositors, and it's the money we are intermediating to lend to these people. So we can't just say that, don't pay, let's start afresh, because there's nothing we shall have to say to the other person who deposited their money with us, and they want to withdraw it at any one time. And we can't say, you wait until when this man has been paid, because that is the mandate of the commercial banks, and that's what we are supposed to do. So that is the catch-22 that we are in, but we know when we have a discussion with these customers of ours, we will be able to come to a solution. And we've indeed been able to do it for many of them, and we hope going forward we should be able to manage the situation as the economy picks up again. As we are hoping that sooner than later we'll have the schools resume their operations, and and other institutions like the accommodation and the hotel industry, as mentioned by the acting CG, which have been greatly affected. And we've taken stock of all these, and we are cognizant, and we know that we need all of us to move together as we pick up, the pieces to be able to continue operating.
All right, thank you very much. But maybe before I let you go, many of the businesses, either at inception or during the time, will need access to finance. They will need some bit of financing. And many a times what we are looking for is, where do I sign? Are you ready to give me the money? Yes. Where do I sign? In how long am I getting the money? Most of the times that's what we pay attention to. But what does a business or even a person need to look out for or be sure of before getting a loan? That's on the side of the customer. But also on the side of the lender, what do you need to look out for and pay attention to before you can lend to any business or even a person?
No, thank you very much, Mildred. And again, I want to refer to what Ruth mentioned, that if there is anybody who didn't care about risks, this is the time. Us as banks, we've been very cautious about risk. I can tell you we are now much more cautious about risk because we know what it can do. And I'm sure everybody now appreciates when we say, when you come to us and apply for a loan and we decline it. I'm sure now people will be able to appreciate. Yeah. And what we are saying is, don't just say you want a loan and you come without having assessed your situation, the kind of business you are doing, without having assessed whether you truly and fully appreciate the risks that are embedded in your business. That's why if you are coming in as a startup business, for example, it will be very, very difficult to get a loan from a commercial bank because we are not a venture capitalist, for example. There are those institutions that will say, I can venture into your new business with you to explore and see how it can operate. For us as commercial banks, who are dependent upon deposits of other people, we can't speculate. We can't experiment with people's money. That's why we will always analyze and assess to determine that indeed you are in the know of your business, you've done it before, for example, you understand the risks involved, and that's what we call the capacity of your business. Your business will be able to generate enough cash flows to be able to meet the repayments that will be required when you get a certain amount of money. We'll need to look at your character as well. Some people have the capacity, but their character is bad. You know, somebody who borrows and willingly goes and defaults, much as the business is working properly, or taking the money and diverts it to other, businesses. So we assess the character. We also assess, we assess the conditions in which your business operates. For example, if you're a school now, which is not working because of COVID, the conditions are such that it will be very difficult for you to get a loan and be able to meaningfully use it and make the repayments as required. So we assess all those things. And that's why, and of course, some people will say, I have a building like this, you must give me money. But that is collateral. But that comes later. We are not in the business of managing real estate, such that whoever has a solid building, you are eligible to get any amount of loan or money that you need. We need to assess all the other things. Collateral will come later, however big it may be. So don't be there and say, because I have my vehicle, because I have my land title, I'm entitled and I'm eligible, and I'll get, whichever amount of money I need. The banks make that assessment, taking into account all those things, to be able to determine how much money you'll take, for how long, at what rate, taking into account your risk profile. As an individual, an enterprise, before you come to borrow, what are the options you want to consider? Of course, loans are one of the options for financing businesses. But there are also other things you need to look at. I talked about if you're a startup business, you probably don't want to immediately think of loans. Think of maybe, have you saved, savings? Can somebody give you a grant, Are you able to go maybe to a venture capitalist? As other options, rather than immediately thinking of getting a loan as a means of financing your business.
Okay.
We've been talking about this situation in which we are. She talked about, where now people can feel the importance of savings. If there is anybody who hasn't understood the importance of business, of savings, they will never. We know in our economy we have one of the lowest savings ratio to GDP. I think they talk about 12 or 13%. Other developed economies are doing 40, 50% of their GDP as savings. So would this be an opportunity for all of us as an economy to appreciate the importance of savings, grow those savings? And as we grow those savings, we give an opportunity to financiers to be able to get long-term capital. And if we have long-term capital, then we should be able to address the issue of interest rates, which is also another, teething issue as far as financing of businesses is concerned. Because our interest rates are still high, making it very difficult for anybody who wants money or funding to finance their businesses. And one of the causes is because of lack of long-term capital, because of low savings.
That's very true. Saving culture, and I always love to say that you don't need to have a lot to save. You just need to have the heart, and then you start saving. Many of us think you save after spending, and yet you're supposed to do the opposite. First save, and then you can spend. Ruth, let me first come back to you before I go to our acting CG. You talked about the 5 priorities. Maybe many of the businesses have not done that, and they have now to learn. But currently, as we stand, I have struggled as much to stay afloat. What are some of those things as a business owner that I need to pay attention to make sure that during this COVID-19 pandemic, I keep afloat, while I also put in place the others that you talked about that probably have not been doing?
One of the things that entrepreneurs normally utilize is whenever there is a crisis or a problem, you turn it around. You can use it to turn it around. And I always tell people that what has happened is that a number of times when people see a problem, they take it as an opportunity. So for you, if you've not, and I want to use a very simple example of teachers that are entrepreneurs to make sure that people understand what I want to say. Currently, right now, there are teachers that have been home for 2 years. They have not been earning. But there are teachers who made the decision and say, within this period, if I only knew teaching, I am going to learn tiling. I know a teacher that is now handling tiling, putting tiles. He's now handling contracts because the construction sector never stopped during COVID. So they said, I am going to learn a new skill and I'm going to go into it. And I can tell you, 20% of the teachers will not go back to teaching.
True.
Because what they are doing now is making more money. I want to give you another example. There are so many teachers now who come to our homes and teach our children from home. I have a teacher that has a schedule daily. She comes to teach your child. You pay 50,000 per day to 30,000. And she has about 4 homes in a day. In a day. So that is 30,000 average times 4, which is 120,000 in a day. Meaning in 10 days, he's already earning 1.2 million.
And probably she
And,
was
and
earning half
in
of
a
that.
month, it is 2.4.
Yes.
You get my point? They are people that have come up with this innovative digital learning. You've seen it, where you pay a small fee.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
And they are teaching people how to learn. So businesses should be like that. If things are not working, if it is harder for you to do something or selling a certain product, use this opportunity and turn it around. It can actually become an option, a business opportunity for you. The other thing is that this is now the time to look at yourself as a business and see, did we have unnecessary expenses? Did we have unnecessary workers? This is the time for you to say, Tom, I know you're my friend's son, but I don't need you during this time. I know I am your Uncle Mark, but during this time, I think I need the quality. We need to take more time now to see, do we have the necessary workers that fit into our budget? Am I located in a premise where I have to pay a lot of rent and I don't need it? You don't have to be in Kampala anymore. And I think we are learning that people are making more money who are operating in, and I think you can give us those examples. People are operating in a suburb, you pay less rent, and then you're able to actually make more profits. And I think also one other thing as a business owner is about personal finance management. This business is for you, but a number of time business owners touch and move money from there. That is why they default on some of the loans anyway. Because they get a loan, they divert the money, they do this and this. As soon as you get money, you want to put your child in a very expensive school, you want to buy the most business owners, actually, when they get a big contract, they buy the latest cars, and you ask yourself, is this a reward? Is this what MD you tell the clients? You get it? And I think that for me, this is the time as a business owner not to compete in expenditure, but to compete in innovative turnaround ideas that can help you transform your businesses. This is the time for you to say, if I was into catering, it is no longer working. Can I be in my home and then do online deliverables? Deliver to people's homes? Identify the bachelors and be able to tell them, I can always make you your Sunday meal. I can make your order. So for me, I think these are critical moments. And I also want to get to URA. I have said for URA, yes, you're doing a good job, but I think sometimes businesses want you to understand them. And one of the things I want URA to do as part of their CSR is to invest in innovative businesses. Identify young people that have very good business ideas. Support them. Learn the nitty-gritty of their businesses and the profit. Why? Because sometimes URA estimates, this guy that is running this travel company, I think, makes so much. This guy that has an events management company, you understand? So businesses feel, be with them. Nurture those innovations and understand them, because when you support and understand these young, to develop these businesses, you're able to know that for you to break even in this business, you need so much time. For you to be able to make a profit, you need this so much. You can actually become both advisory as you get the tax. Because you're able to say, I have invested a business for people to go to the moon. Moon is so big at the moment. And I'm going to learn this business. I am going to understand it. I'm going to know how much you invest. I'm going to know how much you earn and how much net profit you make. You get it? Now, because you have nurtured it, you're even able to estimate how much you can tax. A number of businesses have a challenge. I have done trade before where you say, maybe I shouldn't record. Let me let URA estimate. You understand my point?
Yeah.
And for me, I think if you're able to do that, invest in that, and give us those model businesses, and let's see them grow. Then you're able to say, we have mastered these businesses, we know how they work, this is this is the average. It will become easier for people. They will feel that you're with them, you understand them, you are not coming in there when they have really struggled and try to look for something new. People go into funeral services, you're sleeping. Why don't you understand it? The moment they start earning money, you come in there. You understand? I am saying, and I'm requesting from PSFU, let's try to understand these businesses. Let us nurture them. A few, do a model every year. Support innovative, young people with innovative ideas. Invest in them, understand them, walk the journey with them. And then that's it. You're able to say. The other issue is agriculture sector. We have so many Ugandans that are not paying taxes, and they need these services. And I want to reiterate what the lady said from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Sometimes the businesses says it is too much. Because I am organized, sometimes we say, whenever you're compliant, you know, in Uganda they say having a big butt does not mean you have to suffer the strokes. You get it? Yes. So sometimes you feel it, that, you know, the more I am compliant, and I think that for me, I want the URA section of agriculture, for example. There are so many people that are making money from agriculture. Sure. And most Ugandans are in there. They sell their passion fruits, they sell their antulas, they sell their dairy products, and I see all these cows coming on the trucks. You get it? But then you have a little person that is basically having a smaller business, trying to be compliant. And I think that for me, because one of the things the president wants is to also advise, how do we ensure that we expand the tax base? And I pray that URA is able to look at all those. There's so many sectors out there where people are making a lot of money and nobody knows. And then the few that pay actually suffer a lot.
That's very true. Yeah. And while you're speaking, I love the fact that our acting CG, Mr. Ebo Kagumire, was nodding. And that's why I'm coming to you in the same vein. How is Uganda, I've known URA to be a business enabler away from just a tax collector. How are you helping these struggling businesses practically as Uganda Revenue Authority?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mildred, and thank you, and all panelists. I think you've nailed it, because when I said we want to collect 24.6 trillion, beyond even the finance target, for us we are saying, you know, like in church, I don't know, in mosques, there's zakat, then for us, the Christians, they call it tithe. People pay it willingly. I've never seen a pastor or a sheikh forcing people to pay. He just stands on a pulpit and makes a sermon and preaches, and you see people putting in the basket. That's where we want to reach. Gone are the days where revenue authorities are known to be running after people, closing things, blocking people, and we think we want to make our tax education more clear, so that we are down to earth to this person who is paying and says, why am I paying this tax? Why am I paying this tax? When they get that philosophy, they will just pay willingly. They will just pay willingly. And they will not leave the burden to a few, like you're talking about. You'll find that into a person saying, where are they registering from? I don't have to run after them to register to get a tax identification number. Then I tell them, you are not ready to pay. You've not reached the threshold. When am I reaching the threshold? In 1 year. That is the spirit. We want to start this financial year with 2.5 million taxpayers. And then we see how we grow it, I still think, like you have said, there are very many Ugandans who are actually in the tax-paying bracket who are not paying taxes. They are out there. But I think it is us who are into revenue collection to pass on this message and tell them the value of paying taxes. Some even are not, they don't know how much, the percentages. Can we break it down and make it so easy and translate it down? And that's why we are focusing more on tax education and expanding the taxpayer register. So when they get on now, we get a clientele. We have a pool which we can go to. We know this one is in Paida, this one is in Zombo, this one is in Chikubo. I sometimes enter Chikubo and I see shops, and then you ask them, they have a tin, and they are there. Some don't have tin. In Chikubo, you know those businesses. So that shows you there is still a lot that we need to do as government, not to force people to pay, but encourage them to pay and know when they pay this tax, it is for their benefit. It is for their benefit. And that's the philosophy we are going out with. We've been having another one of encouraging cross-border. You know, South Sudan and Congo. The government policy now is on import substitution. That's why you realize domestic taxes is collecting about 16 trillion and customs is collecting about 8.7 trillion of the 24.6. Why the import duties keep shrinking. So we are encouraging more importation of raw materials and intermediate goods to facilitate production and manufacturing. Now, we have our natural markets here across Democratic Republic of Congo. We have South Sudan. They are our immediate neighbors. They really need our agricultural items. Someone will come from somewhere and take over these natural markets. Why? We are still bent on saying China, Dubai, China, Dubai. There's a lot of money in exporting just in our neighborhood here. Yes, take your bananas, dry them, improve on them, add value. You will see how people will take them. They are our natural markets and they need our products. I know the plastics, when I look at the statistics, all the plastics that are in our neighboring countries are from here. All the sugar almost is from here. So these are areas we need to do. As a revenue authority, we are trying to simplify processes for cross-border trade to make it easy for you to go. We've built warehouses at the borders for agricultural products. Bring and put them there as you wait for your markets and you transit to another country. That is the model, and that's where government is going. So we are going to focus more on domestic revenue mobilization. And we cannot get it unless we encourage Ugandans to get involved in production. Okay. And I think that is another area. One other area has been, we've been more into courts. We find a lot of money wasted, taxes wasted. We are in court all the time. PricewaterhouseCoopers goes with their clients and take us to court. We spend a lot of time there. So we've come up with what we call alternative dispute resolution. I think you talked about it. We are saying before we go to court, actually we should go to court. There should be a win-win situation between us. Can we dialogue? Can we mediate? Can we sit on table? If you are failing to pay 100 million, okay, is there any way, is there an option that you can pay 80 and we close it? Instead of going to court for 20 million. And so we've started that. So far, it has yielded about 365 billion. Wow. And we think we want to continue encouraging that. So as we do more and reach out, we have also done our contact center. Now we've revised it. It's MTN calling and asking our taxes. So we are doing the same now. If you call the URA toll line now, you'll see someone pick your call at 11 p.m. It never used to happen before. Yes, officers are in there at 7 a.m. up to 11. Maybe with time we'll do 24/7 because there are some taxpayers outside Uganda who may want to call after midnight. Okay. But we have revamped that call center. We want to reach out to our taxpayers. We want them to be part of us so that we remove this tax burden from a few Ugandans and we all contribute to national development. Thank you, Mildred.
Thank you very much. Maybe for clarity, you talked about having yielded about 365 billion, and that was in reference to alternative dispute resolution. Is that money saved for you not going to court and wasting a lot of time and money there?
Yes, I think that is much, much better. You know,
1 billion every day saved.
Yes, it's much, much better than being in court.
Oh, yeah.
And we started it during COVID, because when COVID came, courts closed. So you are there holding billions and billions. We said, can't we call these companies? Come on table. Let's discuss. Where is the contention? Where is the issue? Because when you go to the Tax Appeals Tribunal, which is our court for tax, they say, go back and mediate.
Oh, yeah.
So we realize if they are already sending us to mediate, why don't we do it before we go to court?
That's very true.
And it's somehow working for us. And we want to encourage those who are still in court. There is room for you to come and negotiate with us. You don't aim at winning us, because most of the time we have been actually winning, because the law is always on our side. But you are delaying in courts. Come, let's pay, and then we move together to collect this revenue. Thank you.
And I think alternative dispute resolution, which has also been picked up by the courts, will save us of the normal song, case backlog, because there are cases that can actually be sorted outside of court without wasting a lot of time. Crystal, coming to you, you talked about some of the government interventions. And, well, when you talked about the 100,000, I think someone out there was thinking, but that is still under review. There are some people who are not supposed to even get it, who got it. How is the government intervention working, especially during this COVID-19 period? Is it actually reaching, are the interventions reaching the intended, people?
Thanks, Mildred. And I think just before I answer that question, I wanted to speak to some of the points that Ruth and the URA has spoken about.
Please do.
On family businesses, Ruth, I think the points that you raise are quite critical around succession planning. And we've been working closely with family businesses and telling them you need to seek professional financial advisory services. For a long time, family businesses were reluctant to obtain professional help. But now with the biting impact of COVID, we are seeing many of them coming to seek professional advice. Help me with my working capital management. Help me with my cash flow projections. How can I renegotiate with my suppliers, with the banks and the like? So I'd really encourage the family businesses out there, especially with now with the Buy Uganda, Build Uganda initiative. Let us make use of professional services in helping manage the businesses and turning them around, especially during this time. URA spoke to ADR, and it is something that the business community has welcomed, and we as tax advisors have been working closely in promoting ADR. And what I normally tell my clients is that when you go to court, there's always going to be a winner and a loser. And most times, you could end up being the loser. But when you pursue ADR and you sit at a table and you negotiate and you mediate, you end up with a win-win situation for both sides. However, that requires flexibility. I've been in those meetings and it's usually pull, and push, but eventually with flexibility and compromises here and there, you eventually come to a position that is agreeable to both sides. And this really reduces on the time that you spend, on the cost of litigation, on lawyers. I'm a lawyer, by the way. But if you can reduce that cost and the time that you invest in litigation, it would really help free up some of that cash that you would have paid out in costly litigation. So are the government interventions working? Yes, they are working. The waiver of penalties and interest, we've been working with so many taxpayers, helping them with the voluntary disclosures. People who had accumulated a backlog of tax liabilities have been able to take advantage of this time to actually declare their taxes to the URA and pay the principal that has been outstanding, and have gotten relief from the penalties and the waivers. And that has given them penalties and interest. And that has given them some breathing space around cash flow management. So the penalties and interest that they would have paid has now been reinjected back in the business. The moratorium from Bank of Uganda on loan repayments has worked. We've seen so many businesses take advantage of that, renegotiating with the bankers, and they've also taken learnings from that and applied it now to their suppliers. So if I can renegotiate with my bank, can I also now renegotiate payment terms, credit terms with my suppliers in Uganda, my suppliers in China, so that I have headroom to be able to manage my cash flows better. So we see these initiatives working. The withholding VAT that was supposed to have kicked in 2020, having to put that on hold for now has been quite helpful, because if it had been implemented during COVID, it would have significantly affected cash flow of the businesses. So these initiatives are actually working. However, our call to government is to try and extend some of them even to 2021, especially, I know now the VAT, the withholding VAT is coming into force. I mean, it's 2 years now and we are still in COVID. The initiatives that came in at the beginning of COVID, and we all thought by 2020, the situation will have normalized. But it hasn't. Yeah. And we don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow in a year's time. So let these initiatives be continuous because it's a win-win from both sides. If I continue operating, you continue collecting revenue.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Crystal. Mr. Fabian Kasi, coming back to you on loans still, because at some point in time, for any business that thought, I can never take a loan, I am all doing well, you may, because of COVID-19, need to take a loan. But what are some of those issues that one needs to know before taking a loan?
Well, thank you very much again. Definitely, there are a couple of things you need to be aware of before you make a decision to approach a bank to access a loan. Things like, of course, the other time I mentioned about how is your business doing? You know, you feel it is business that is going to generate enough cash flows to be able to repay the loans. But as you do that, you also need to understand the tenor, the period. You want a loan that you feel you can pay over a 1 year period, or is it one which you think you can pay over a 6 month period? The kind of business you are dealing with, is it one where you'll need a grace period so that you apply for it? Because in most cases, you'll borrow today, after a month, you are expected to pay back. But you need to go there and say, look, given the nature of my business, I want to negotiate that I don't make a payment until after 6 months. And we do that a lot, especially for the agro-lending business. Whereby somebody has borrowed to plant today and maize will mature after 4 months. Definitely you won't have money to begin paying on a monthly basis. You need a grace period of 4 months when you'll have harvested your maize so that you are in position, you've sold your maize and you're in position to begin paying the loan. Some people, don't take that into account. So you need to have debated and understood the kind of period that you need to negotiate with the bank. You need to know the interest rate. As you negotiate the interest rate, you need to know whether it should be floating or fixed. Most people don't know that. It's only when they see their loan changing because the prime rate has changed and they begin saying, but this is not the rate. But they didn't understand that when they were getting the loan, they were told that their interest rate is floating, depending on how the interest rates will be changing over time. We've been hearing and we've been reading about Bank of Uganda rates, always changing, whereby, it is a signal to the commercial banks to also float or change their interest rates. And we've been seeing a trend of rates coming down. But you can also get a situation where the rates go up. Meaning if you had a prime rate of, say, 18% plus 1, if that P now changes to 19, it means you'll be now paying 21. All those things need to be understood so that you negotiate a rate that you truly understand and which you feel you'll be able to pay given the nature of your business. And of course, you also need to know the amount that you'll be able to afford. You don't just go and say, I want $1 billion. And that's when you'll go, after getting that $1 billion, you first go and marry another wife, buy a new car, before you now begin, resorting to financing your business. And in the process, you are making a mistake, and you'll definitely be in trouble, and you won't be able to repay that loan. So you need to approach a bank when you are very clear in your mind as to the kind of terms that you think you will be able to afford. And now it has been made mandatory that no bank will give you a loan before you sign off what we call a key fact document. That KFD document is the one which stipulates all the terms, and it confirms that you've indeed understood those terms, and that's why you need to sign off. Of course, the temptation usually is somebody wants the money now and now, they just ask, where do I sign? And many of them get tempted and just sign off things which they haven't understood. You are even given liberty to go and consult with your lawyer or somebody who is knowledgeable before you sign off those things. All that is available. And those of you who have come to borrow from commercial banks, there is that document which you have to sign off, which stipulates in detail all the time. And if there is any term that you don't understand, you have the liberty to go and ask or get in an expert to help you to understand it, so that you are able to make an informed decision as to whether to take the loan or not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fabian Kasi. I bet over 60% of people never read that document in full. They will ask, where do I append my signature? And it's done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking a very, very short break. And when we do return, we'll continue with the questions. I've seen quite many coming through on social media, but that shortly after we return from the break. The Uganda Revenue Authority, iconic home, of course, the tower here. And this is the third edition of the URA Bomba Year Business. Will be running for 5 weeks up to the 12th of November, and it will be every Friday. So make a date with us every Friday, 10 to midday. Ask all the questions that different sector players who will be answering different issues with regard to how business can actually be kept afloat, issues of trade, issues of intellectual property, and much more about that. Your questions are already coming through. We have just a few more minutes to go, but a special thank you once again to all our partner media houses. And I want to say we're currently live on URA TV itself. We are live on UBC Television, Inspiring Uganda. We are live on BBS. We are live on Baba, CTV, and Smart 24. But we'll have a repeat of this in case you've just joined and you missed out a bit of the discussion. You will have a repeat of this on NBS television between 11 and midday each and every Tuesday. Now, my first question is to Mr. Ebo Kagumire, who is also our acting CG today. This is from Nancy Nachiboneka, who asks, where would a diaspora customer in Uganda get a tin if they are not operating any business, but are doing a one-off transaction where a tin is actually a requirement?
Thank you, Mildred, and thank you for your question. Application for TIN is online. Application for TIN is online. You just need to go to our website, the URA website, and then you go to a column. It's a web application. You fill in all your particulars, and then you get your TIN certificate straight. Gone are the days where you have to come to our office to get your TIN. You can apply for TIN online, and we'll be able to recognize it, and we'll also give you feedback to confirm that the process has been completed. So whether you're in US, whether you're in Canada, whether in United Arab Emirates, you can apply for TIN, and you will join our database. And we are growing that number to reach 2.5 million this financial year.
Okay, that's great. Another one coming through, as you were mentioning the revenue decline in some of the sectors, education registered a 10.35% decline, while we had, for example, some sectors like accommodation and services registering a high one at 37. Both have kept closed. Schools are still closed, and yet accommodation, at least for a bit, is open. And one is asking, why does this seem to be a rather low pace decline for the education services? And also another one, when you did mention about duty remission, and one is asking, how much did this cost in terms of revenue? Because this is revenue that at the end of the day should have been collected.
Okay, thank you. The question let me start with the one on duty remission. Duty remission, basically we are saying if you're a manufacturer or manufacturers of COVID relief items in Uganda, you're not going to pay import duty. So even the VAT Act would exempt you, so that as you produce cheaply, and you are able to support Ugandans. And in terms of collection, yes, we may have missed the money at importation, but definitely we'll get it when you are exporting or when you're selling through income tax. Through income tax, through VAT, and through the workers you're going to employ under pay as you earn, all the domestic taxes. So it is a cost benefit. You lose the import duties, but you gain on the domestic taxes. I don't have immediate figures of how much we collected, but like I've told you, the domestic revenues have kept on increasing.
Okay.
Have kept on increasing, and the customs duties going down. Now, regarding the other question on the sectors, the question I didn't get it well, why education and accommodation?
They're wondering that education seemed to register a rather low decline pace at 10.3, and yet they are completely closed, haven't come back.
When we assessed, we found that actually some schools remained online. They were studying online. They were not brick and mortar. And there's some payments which were coming through. There are some students who are paying school fees. There are some skeleton staff who are kept in universities, especially in some pay as you earn. So we saw some revenue coming, but not as expected. Not as expected. And that's a sector which was growing, especially the private institutions coming up, the private universities coming up, and the foreign students coming in to study from here. So with COVID, it had that impact. I think that is the explanation I can give at the moment. For accommodation, yes, you know, hotels were closed, and tourists are the ones who normally occupy these hotels. As Uganda, we need really to strengthen local tourism and encourage it. How many times have you slept in a hotel, Serena, in a year as a Ugandan? How many times have you gone there? Oh, you say that is not affordable. I may not manage. But these are our facilities, and in the midst COVID, we are encouraging local tourism. Can Ugandans use these facilities which are available? Now that there is some ease in the accommodation sector and recreation, let's try to be there as we wait for the foreign tourists to come and occupy these facilities. That is a sector which has been badly hit, and we're also feeling it here at revenue collection. Thank you, Mildred.
All right, in just a bit, we'll also, in the last few minutes, be engaging the media. There could be some questions coming through from our colleagues in the media, and I will request that we avail an easier option for the media to ask brief and concise questions. But while we go to that, Mr. Fabian Kasi, I'll come to you on the aspect of loan steal. It is perceived and believed that when you take a loan, the win situation is only on the financial institution. But at what point in time, or where is a win-win situation for both the lender and the borrower?
Well, thank you again. Like all businesses, of course, and as banks, we want to be in a win-win situation. We look at the person or the enterprise we lend as a partner to the bank. And of course, you wouldn't want your partner to lose out in an arrangement. So at the end of the day, as a bank, we win when we've given you money, you've gone into a better position, and you've got better capacity to repay that loan. We win because you've given back money, you know, of course, which money we are intermediating, you know, from the depositors, but with a margin, with a return. But we would also want you, as you borrow and invest in your business, to be increasing on your capacity to operate, to be growing, to be developing, so that even when you come back next time, you will be in a position to borrow even a much bigger loan. And that is the kind of win-win situation we want. And that's why it is not only about the bottom line of the banks that we look out for, but we also look at the social aspect of the person or the enterprise that has borrowed the money from us. And that's what, for example, us at Centenary Bank, we call it a three bottom line kind of objective. We look at the money that we earn because that helps us to continue serving, but also look at the social aspect. Whoever borrowed the money from us, how has he benefited? How has he grown in the way he feeds, the way he takes his children to school, and so on. But also we look at how the environment is also protected. Those are the three bottom lines that we look out for. But of course, all the questions that are coming are about loans. And again, that's where it gets, slanted. We need also to talk about savings. I want people to ask, how can it be made better and convenient for us to save? I will tell you that now, for example, following the new world order, we've automated the way people can open accounts seamlessly. You don't have to move to look for our premises or to look for our staff. You can now open an account on your phone. Sent online, you can open an account, and it becomes active. You can use it to transact. You can transfer money in the comfort of your home using our mobile banking platform, dubbed Center Mobile. And all those things, people need to take opportunity of them, so that at the end of the day, as they think of borrowing, they're also thinking of saving. They are thinking of keeping their money safely. They are thinking of how they can transmit money, especially at this time where you no longer now need to use cash. Can you use a card? We have the Center Visa cards, which you can use to transact either through the agents that we have. We have one of the biggest agent network. Wherever you go, you'll find Center agents, such that you are now enabled, in light of the challenges we have of movement, you can still do business using the banking services.
All right, thank you very much. Crystal, what have you seen in the market in terms of how businesses are coping up with COVID-19? Well, we might be thinking that everyone is hit, and yet it's actually a totally different story on ground.
Thanks, Mildred. Yes, the situation has been bad, it's been challenging, but there have been businesses that have been able to survive, and not only survive, they are thriving. And we see many of them that have been able to do that it's been as a result of innovation. Those that innovated early, that automated their businesses early, were able to continue providing services, continue selling, even during the lockdown. There are many businesses that had already logged into the mobile money payment platforms, and they're able to continue selling even during the lockdown. But right now, of course, you see that mobile money has now become the norm. But some other businesses came late to the party. We've also seen flexibility in pricing. If you remember, during the first lockdown, restaurants discounted their prices. And you know that food business is one of those very high margin businesses. So for them to be able to discount their prices, it was for them to reach out to customers and say, look here, we're able to give you two for the price of one, free delivery. So that has helped some businesses to continue operating. I already talked about things around the renegotiation of supplier agreements, diversification of suppliers. Before COVID, most of our suppliers were coming from China, but in the first part of the lockdown, China was closed for business. So what would that mean for you as a business that was heavily reliant on China? You had to diversify to other suppliers, for example, in United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, which remained open for business. We've seen a lot of, especially on the family business side, embracing corporate governance. You have businesses where you, the business owner, you are the accountant, you are the lawyer, you're the tax person, you're the board of directors, you're everything, you know. But now in the embracing of corporate governance and saying, you know what, let me get a professional to come in and do the tax. Let me get in a professional to come in and advise on how I should manage my working capital. We have seen businesses being able to restructure their working capital and to keep afloat as a result of that.
All right, thank you very much. I'll come to Mr. Ebo Kagumire. Like Ruth said, many a times, sometimes when there is a new tax, it is the already compliant ones that will bear the brunt. And there's so many people who are not compliant. Apart from just compliance, there's so many people as well who haven't formalized. And yet they're making so much money out there. But for them to formalize, they keep thinking, when I formalize, the only thing I will be expecting at the end of the day is a URA knocking on my door. What is there more than meets the eye into formalization that acts as an advantage to you as a business, as opposed to keeping, under the carpet?
Thank you. Thank you, Mildred. And I wanted to speak to this by telling you, of course, we have a program of voluntary compliance at URA, and it has also helped us, people who come and declare. So you don't have to penalize them, you don't have to charge them interest. They just come and say, I've done a self-check and a health check of my business. This is how much I am supposed to pay. We welcome that. And we have those who come and say, I've struggled. We talked of family businesses. I've struggled with keeping books of accounts. And we cannot afford the PwC of this world and the Ernst and Youngs to come and help us. Can you come and send a team to help us out? And we've reached out to them and supported them on how to keep the books of accounts so that they're able to compute the due taxes and file proper returns. So it's a strategic program that we are running of voluntary compliance. And we still, of course, have those who have refused to comply. They are there. Even when you bring programs for voluntary compliance, like the authorized economic operator, you say we will allow you to clear through the ports very fast. We have VIP treatment in the bonded warehouses. You can clear goods on your own. You can have your warehouse. We don't need a URA officer to be there. All those benefits, we give them to our taxpayers, but they still insist, no way. You need to come and look for us. So what do? We go. There is some enforcement arm, of course, but not so difficult. We come, and but there is a process of not forcing you to comply, requesting you to comply. We tell you. We issue with a demand. We say pay. Again, you refuse to pay. Then we go to CASI, sorry to use your bank, or Centenary Bank. We say we want an agency notice. We place, we say block this man's account. The banks support us. Some even deplete all the money from the banks. So there are categories of taxpayers like that until we reach the final enforcement method where we have to close your business. We don't want to reach there because our role is not to close your business. Our role is to encourage you to pay and keep in business. But we are seeing the number slowly reducing of the unwilling taxpayers who don't want to comply. And those are the ones we are focusing on to find out why are we bad? Have we failed to say something? Have we failed to teach you how to pay the taxes? Is it naturally that you hate paying taxes? So we want to reach to them and find out what challenges they are going through in paying taxes. Now, lastly, Mildred, we've realized that category of unwilling taxpayers who don't want to pay, the systems themselves are going to force them to pay.
Okay.
Yes, the systems are going to force them to pay. So if you are supplying a supermarket, for example, so how are you going to supply the supermarket? Because it's on e-freeze. So you'll be forced to pay. So if we put it on fuel now, will you drive a car with the water? Definitely you'll pay fuel. So somehow the systems that we have put in place are going to not force them to pay, but they will comply on their own. Okay. But I admit the number is reducing and reducing as we do more tax education.
All right, thank you very much. Ruth, coming back to you, you were talking about product diversification as one of those, key areas that businesses need to look out for. But in terms of product diversification, there is a lot. But for a business particularly, in line of what you can be able or how much you can be able to diversify, what are some of the key areas I need to look out for in whatever product diversification approach I will need to take?
I think when I talked about that, it was as a result of now learning that things can, it is like Mildred, you're working on the TV station, and if you're not thinking about something else, if a day comes and you can no longer work on the TV station, what happens?
Sure.
And I think for the last 15 years, I've been teaching businesses, but also individuals, even workers in companies, whether public or private, to say you don't have to rely on one thing. You need to think a little bit further. And I think for businesses, it is very possible to grow another segment, slowly but surely. And if you look at the successful businesses, the Madivanis here, the Mukwanos, they are not into one business segment. They are doing several business segments. You don't just wake up in a day. I think for me, the point would be if you're running a chain of restaurants, if you've been into education, you should be able to say, what else can I be able to do on the side and grow with time? And it has the potential to grow, but also sometimes some of them feed into each other apart from looking out. And I think that is extremely very, very critical because if you are into one business and something happens and it's not working, then it becomes a big challenge. For example, you might say it's like people who have schools, all right? If you had on the side a maize mill, initially maybe by the time you started it, it was supposed to supply your school, all right? But still you have other people you could supply. People have been eating. Yes. You remember when OPM procured maize and beans and all that? So you're able to know that I started this business. It's able to feed into what I'm doing, but on the other side, it can also grow on its own. It can also be looking at the market trends. What else can I be able to do whereby I see a demand in the future? It might not be necessarily related, but it could be something which is a little bit emerging, maybe where you have passion, you think you have a niche, you have maybe staff or a partner that is able to support you in that area, but the reality is we can no longer do one thing. We've been proved wrong.
Yeah.
And I know, because I chair a hotel, a four-star hotel on the board, and I know how much we have suffered in the hotel, whereby a time came and we had to put every worker, we just had to remain with about 10%. And what happened to the other 90%? And I know how much it means to a company where you're looking at one source of revenue and nothing else is coming out. And sometimes it's about, for example, if it's a hotel and in your head you said, okay, I would also do deliverables. You know, if, for example, cases where hotels were not working, but they had very strong restaurant services, they actually continued working because they would still deliver. Where they had dry cleaning services that were working and it was good, they continued working. So it can actually be in the same line of business, but maybe do product segmentation in the same line of business. Okay. And I still want to speak to the people who are employed that are getting salaries. I want to say, you can never be rich with a salary. And you cannot earn a salary forever because we will all retire. But how do you use that little money? To be able to put something on the side for you, grow it very slowly, because I can tell you a number of people that pay taxes in the villages are the people who were working before and they have now retired and they started their small businesses here and there. And I think maybe one thing that we need to work with you is to encourage public servants, people who are employed, to start businesses and nurture them, because these are big. I can tell you, these are big these are big investors when you go up country. If you go up country, it is the guys that get salaries that actually invest. And I think at times we forget them in our programs. So I think we need to reach out. I've not seen you reaching out to workers in companies. We need to reach out because those are big potential taxpayers, they are big potential investors, and we need to look out to them.
All right, thank you very much. The conversation is almost just starting. It's interesting, and yet time is really against us. But I'll give each of our panelists about 2 minutes to give your parting shots, at least in the remaining few minutes that we still have on air. I'll start off with you, Crystal.
Thanks, Mildred. We are in this for a long haul. There is no end in sight, and we need to work together to come and have a continuous engagement with all stakeholders, business community, the URA, the government, because it's at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for both of us. If I continue surviving, if I continue operating my business, the URA continues to collect. So let us enable each other, let us be supportive of each other, and continue working together, having a more consultative approach to business, to the economy, and to revenue collection.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Crystal. Mr. Fabian Kasi, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I guess going through the discussion and the many things that have been happening of late, we've learned, first of all, we are in a new world order. We are learning that it is important for as many people as possible to be financially included. We talk about financial inclusion. We saw when there were restrictions of movement, you needed to pay for whatever you wanted. You couldn't carry your cash to a supermarket or a place. You could easily send it online. So financial inclusion is very critical. We've also learned that use of technology is something that we all need to embrace in light of the new world order. We are also learning that savings are a very critical element of development. You can imagine how people survived when they were not being employed and they didn't have any savings, any money to live on. So at any one time, you need to have money that you can always live on a rainy day. Nobody knew that COVID would come. It came. People had to survive. If you didn't have anything that you had saved, the job had collapsed, many people suffered. So we are learning a lot of lessons. And I think we now know that going forward, we need to recalibrate the business models. We need to change the way we are doing things. Things have changed forever. The bus has taken off, and we need to move along with it because this is where everybody is moving to. Issues of savings, issues of being able to work with banks, issues of being able to be financially literate. We talk about financial literacy. very critical. Banks have a mandate of mobilizing savings and being able to pass them on to those who would want them for investments. As an economy, we need investments, we need savings. There's no economy that has ever developed without banks. As banks, we are asking for support, for collaboration. When we talk about URA, how they are supporting the banking sector, for example, they need to increase on their support. We've been talking about tax deepening. Banks have been complying as much as possible, and every year in, year out, of course, URA is looking to how much more they need to get from banks. We need to see them also widening and going out to other sectors, tax widening, going out to other sectors. If there is a scorecard, for example, every end of the year, we would want to hear from URA that this outgoing year, we've been able to put on board these kind of avenues where we are not getting taxes. I think that will be, be a good KPI for us to know that URA is focused on widening tax collection instead of just deepening.
Okay.
For the banking public, of course, we want to assure them as banks. Banks are there as your partners. They always want to see you develop, because if you don't, banks also don't survive. You saw it during COVID. People had challenges of paying loans, had challenges of doing, carrying on their business, which again came back to the banks. And therefore, it is in the interest of banks to ensure that whoever is working with them is also helped to develop, to survive, to grow their businesses. And they are doing all they can to ensure that that happens, so that at the end of the day, everybody is happy to work with banks, and specifically to work with the Centenary Bank. Thank you.
All right. Yes, definitely. Ruth, the next 2 minutes for you, please.
I want to speak to three constituencies. Yeah. First, to the government, and that is through the Ministry of Finance. Where the business are right now, they need development finance. The money in UDB is not enough. As Fabian indicated, the interest rates in banks are a little bit high, and it's very favorable for trade finance. But for other sectors, if the country has to grow, we need to have development finance, and in particular, I am saying we need to have an SME development bank. UDB is basically addressing the large companies, and we have so many small companies that actually cannot access, even startup. It's very possible that they can have a funding for startup, because it is happening in other countries. Why not in Uganda, where we have a big high rate of unemployment? It should happen. The other thing is that the 100 billion for SMEs, for COVID, it's not happening. I don't know what is happening with it. I don't know whether it will be released when COVID is no longer there. That is extremely important. We are telling businesses to go on digital, but data is still very expensive, extremely expensive. And I think we need to look at it. We cannot encourage people to go online, but it's extremely expensive. They can't learn online, they can't trade online, they cannot transact online. Forget about WhatsApp. We are talking about real business, where a small business has to go on and start transacting. We need to look at it seriously. And when it comes to Ugandans that now I'm speaking to, we need to know that taxes that we are paying are meant to develop our country. And I think we need to enjoy paying taxes. On the other hand, we also have to demand how that tax is used. And I think that tax should be able to go to areas which we think are going to develop us. And I want to encourage all of you, because the waiver, I think you're still open. You say where you said, you call it Chikakase? How would you call it? Kakasa. Yes. Kakasa is where you come into URA, and then they are able to work with you. I want to thank them. And he didn't tell you how much they have collected. They actually, so many, it's been a success. And I want to encourage you, walk around any of their agents, and they are able to assist you. And I want to encourage URA to get more into this. Please keep it up. Once COVID is ended, get into the people. I have requested you to understand businesses, to fill them. As you levy a tax, fill them. Don't go back. I have a company where I'm sitting on the board, and they have been very, very compliant. And they said, oh, but we remember now in 2020, they went back. They were giving them clearances every year. And then later on, in COVID, they said, oh, we have checked, and I think the other 4 years, 3. And I said, oh, okay, now I'm raising it here. And it is coming from the businesses to ensure that at least, you don't come in when people are into the need, they are really struggling, and then, but I know that we have gotten the comfort, because if they were not pro-people, they would
Okay.
not be able to organize this. And I want to applaud URA. Every time we have sent somebody, I do so many referrals to your agents. They are always available, and we see a change. And I'm glad that this hall was named Sendaula Hall. You know, after our chairman. He was also our chairman of the board, a very polished gentleman. And I think for me, it also gives us comfort to emulate somebody. And I know right now it is into business. So thank you so much for that. I'm humbled about it. Then the other one that I wanted to say is that for businesses, this is a learning period. If you have not learned, you will never learn. I can tell you. Because every single person in this country, even a child, will not forget COVID. And it is here to stay for some time. That is what I have to say. And I'm asking you, do your things better. Manage your businesses better. Have the right staff. Use business advisors in your businesses. Think about the inefficiencies that you have and improve them, because it is very possible. It is through these moments that entrepreneurs actually come up.
True.
Yes.
And we've seen the entrepreneurs and who they really are during this. And the last 2 minutes, please, to our Acting Commissioner General today, Mr. Ebo Kagumire.
Thank you, Mildred, and thank you to our panelists. I just want to say that at URA we have focused on to transform. If you read our vision, it is transform. It's a transformational revenue service for the economic independence of Uganda. And we are serious. Whenever I'm walking on that expressway and my wife tells me, I think our grandchildren are the ones going to pay this loan, I resonate with our vision. I say, yes, it's true. Our grandchildren may be the ones going to pay these loans. Government is borrowing. But who is collecting this revenue? It is us at Revenue Authority. And we have purpose to say, yes, we want to be independent as a country. So let's collect and let's work with Ugandans to collect what should be collected so that we stop this dependence. Every time we are depending and they force things on us, even when we don't want. And when I wake up as a Revenue Authority officer, I am mobilizing this revenue. And I want to do it in an efficient and transparent manner. And I want the taxpayer out there to know that a URA officer is going to collect this tax in a transparent and efficient manner. And that's what we've told all our staff. Of course, we work with patriotism. We love our country. Whatever we do, we don't want anything to come and harm our country. And our staff, I think we want to get out of that corruption tendencies. They normally talk about it. We want to work with integrity and professionalism. And want to pledge to Ugandans, that's what we've purposed to do, and we are going to do it. So I want to appreciate you, Crystal. I want to appreciate you, Cassie and Ruth, for coming by to share with the Ugandans and the taxpayers out there, and Mildred for moderating on behalf of our Commissioner General, of course, who has not been able to be here, Mr. John Msingzurujochi. Unfortunately, he really wanted to start this first e-BOMBA business, but I know he'll be joining in subsequent e-BOMBA. He could not be here. We want to appreciate your insights into this and our taxpayers for paying your taxes. Thank you, Mildred.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll need to be closing off this. The wrap-up of the discussions will be up on the URA, all the URA online media, and we want to say thank you to URA TV, BBS Telefina, UBC Television, Baba TV, CTV, and Smart 24. Once again, if you missed this session, you can be able to catch it on NBS TV. That's Tuesdays between 11 and midday. Now, we'll have the next e-BOMBA happening next week on Friday, and this one is going to focus on the real estate sector. There is also a chance to invest because of the over 200,000, for example, housing units that are needed for Uganda annually. We are only able to provide about 60,000 units. So you will be delving deeper into the discussion about the real estate sector on our next e-BOMBA next week on Friday. And like I said, this will be going each and every Friday up to the 12th of November. November this very year. The hashtag is URA e-BOMBA Business 21 on social media. I've been your host, Mildred Tohaisa. Thank you so much for joining us. And on sign language, we were joined by Olivia Nachigozi-Bulega. A special thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for your time. And those who are watching online, thank you as well. And on air, we want to say we bring it to a close here. But once again, we'll be back next week on Friday with a focus on the real estate sector.